10 years ago, I was working retail, Starbucks, Trader Joe's, and I got to a point where when I was 20, that was fine. When I was 30, I hated it. And I did a 4-year apprenticeship to learn about how to work with dogs. And so for the last 10 years, I've worked with dogs. Did a 4-year apprenticeship, 4.5, spent 5.5 years having my own business working with dogs, and that's what I did before coming out here. Towards the tail end of COVID, the isolation that came from it and the separateness that was imposed, and my business, it's not that it was struggling, it's that working with dogs is a very much an alone type business, and when we weren't allowed to be around people and everybody became a potential person that might kill me by breathing at me or being near me, that was an imposed isolation that I was not expecting. And so in the last 10 years working with dogs, the last 2 years of it, 3 years of it being the COVID years, I started to not feel great mentally from being isolated. I was in a relationship that was not working out. I was getting a little burnt out working with dogs because it's 24/7. They're around me all the time. And I started to, I guess I would call it self-medicate, but rather than going down to the dark alley in the cliche movie idea of getting drugs, I went down to the produce stand where they had these little blue bottles called Feel Free. And out in Texas, I see them everywhere. And they seem innocuous. It doesn't seem like a very big deal, but what it is highly concentrated kratom and kava. And I started drinking those as just a way to alter my mood. That was the kind of addict that I was in anything that could make me not feel sober, anything that could take me out of the mood that I'm in and feel differently, I would do that. And it started just doing having 1 or 2 a day, and it was just kind of nice. And in that isolation and the frustration and the relationship falling apart, I got up to, in about a year and a half, I got up to about 5 to 7 a day. And they're these little blue bottles and they taste terrible. And I do remember the first time that I took one in order to go to sleep. And that means you've moved past take this to feel good, now you take it to feel okay. First you use it to get elevated, then you use it to feel normal. And I do remember the time that happened, and I fell into about another year of addiction into these little blue bottles until one day I realized that this is beyond something that I can do myself. And so my fiance at the time, we went out to Utah for a vacation, and I told her what was going on and that I needed to taper with these little drinks and withdraw from them on this vacation. And I underestimated the severity of it in a way that I never thought I could feel as horrible as I did. And so it took 11 days to withdraw from these drinks, and it took me from even towards the end, I was still doing my job well and pulling through and doing all that. But I spent 11 days withdrawing from this stuff, no sleep whatsoever, maybe like 15 minutes every now and then, and her having to witness who she loves, myself, not being able to walk, to move. I could barely talk. I did document that journey, and I'm planning on sharing it at some point. And during the whole time that I was going through that, and her keeping an eye on me in that same, like, I can assure you in a situation like that, it is very difficult to feel like you're lovable. And so to have been at my weakest point, feeling completely broken and ashamed of putting myself in this position, to have somebody there to care for me during that process was really powerful. But at the same time that I was going through that, she and I were also dealing with an unsuccessful pregnancy, we'll call it. And for me to be going through that at that level and having to watch her deal with what she had to deal with in that situation, this was 2 people in the most severe circumstances in life, I mean, that I've experienced. Certainly people can go through a lot more than that, but for me to be going through that her to be going through what she was going through at the very same time. Like, it brought us to our literal and metaphorical knees. And at the end of that 2 weeks or so, I ended up taking what's called NAD. A lot of people are familiar with it out here. It's an injection that goes to work on your body and helps you feel better. And it was the first night I was able to get some sleep after 11 days. And she moved through, to the most part, what she had to move through with her experience. And it was so absolutely, utterly devastating that once we made it through, it was like we were barely even people at that point. Like, it was so devastating and so humbling and so powerful that once we landed on the other side, we felt like we needed a little bit of momentum in the positive to prove that we made it through that.